It is 5 o'clock on the West Coast, so let's kick this meetup up for today. So welcome everyone to the Thursday, August 22nd edition. I hope that's the right day. It is of the Vancouver Power BI and Modern Excel User Group meetup. Got a great session coming up for you today with Alejandra Horvath. But before we dive into that, let's just do our normal here. So I want to throw a big shout out to the sponsors that make this happen. Skillwave being the training company that I run with my partner Matt Allington, where we teach you how to be awesome with Excel and Power BI. If you haven't checked out our training products, you definitely should. Excel Guru is the parent company of Skillwave and also the developer and shipper of Monkey Tools, which is my add-in to help you build better data models faster. Our next meetup, so we have coming up, our next Excel meetup coming in. Whoop, my animations are a little bit off here. Let's talk about the next Power BI meetup. So Thursday, September 19th, I'm super excited to be bringing Melissa DeCorta back to talk more about Power Query with us. If you came to Melissa's presentations previously, you know they are fantastic. Just be aware this will be an earlier start time than normal because Melissa is going to be joining us from the Netherlands. So we want to make sure that we do this at a time that she's actually awake. So that's going to be at 12 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday, September 19th. 2 weeks before that, though, we've got Mike Thomas is going to be joining us. He's going to be joining us from England, so that's why the 10 a.m. start time on that one. On Thursday, September 5th, we're going to be talking about cube functions in Excel. Gotta love cube functions as well, so this is going to be a great session as well. So these are both open for RSVPs, so please, get your name in the hat for those. We hope to see you here. I also wanted to just do a quick mention again for those that are new here or may have missed it. If you are interested in learning more about the Monkey Tools add-in, maybe you have it, maybe you want to grab a free copy and see what it can do. We have a free course on using Monkey Tools. This is I was actually really surprised when I put this together that it generated 5.5 hours of video to teach people how to use the software that I built. I had no idea that I'd actually done that much stuff in this. It's kind of weird when you don't look back at things until you do something like this. So great program there with lots of cool stuff there. It'll teach you how to use this software and some of the great things it'll do, both in free and in the pro versions of the tool. Speaking of Monkey Tools, the last sort of official release of this was from August 6th. We put out some BiblioMonkey updates. For those of you not aware of this, BiblioMonkey allows you to store patterns that you can re-inject into Excel later. We've now added replacement tags so that when you use an Excel table, it will prompt you for which table you want to use or which columns you want to use. We've got a new refresh button in there to reload your workbook. If you update things, I know I had someone who was unhappy that, well, not unhappy, they just made a comment that, look, I mean, I made changes in my workbook and BiblioMonkey didn't know they were there. I need a way to reload it without closing and reopening. So we now have that. And you can also use some more special characters in the prompts that you make so that when you're injecting your formulas, you can pop up a message to say what it does or what you want it to do. That will actually support a few more things. We've also got some import monkey updates. I did a lot of refactoring on this thing here. We've now got the ability where if you're loading a data model table from your Power BI model or from a backup model into Excel, yes, you can load from Power BI into Excel and rebuild your data model that way. We now actually load empty data model tables if the data source is inaccessible instead of giving you an error. So that's cool. There's always bug fixes, of course. And again, don't forget about the free course on how to use this. Smart quotes. That's a great question, Joseph. I don't know. I'm not in an Excel formula. I don't think you can use smart quotes, but we'll have to check that one out. So troublemaker. But I'll look. We'll see. My next semester of my Self-Service Business Intelligence Academy kicks off on September 11th. If you are interested in being awesome at Excel and Power BI, you should definitely check out this program. We talk about Excel, Power Query, Power Pivot, DAX measures, dimensional modeling, Power BI, all of these things to help you be able to learn to do build the best solutions you can in the best tool for the job. There's tons of training and coaching in this. There's a lot of Ask Ken sessions where you can ask questions about whatever you want. These are live sessions that get recorded and whatnot. It gives you access to my books, my software, all kinds of things. If you're interested, you should definitely check this out, and you can do so at the link here. All of these links, by the way, are posted on the Meetup. The slide deck is already on the Meetup site, so you can download to get access to all of these links. If you're not maybe ready for the self-service BI bootcamp with Power Query and Power Pivot, Maybe you've got people on your team that want to get just better with Excel generally. We also have an Excel Fundamentals Academy. This is really designed to help you fill in gaps in formulas and pivot tables and data visualization and Power Query to get you ready to take that next step into the big games of the self-service BI stuff. So if you're interested, you can check that out. The next kickoff date for this semester, again, is on September 11th. This meetup, as all meetups, is being recorded and will be posted on the SkillWave YouTube channel. Generally takes me 24 to 48 hours to get the recording processed and ready to go. But when that happens, I will post in the meetup group, and you will get a notification if you RSVP to the meetup that the recording is ready. The last thing I'm going to throw out here is if you would like to get involved and come and speak to our user group, we would love to have you. Please fill out this short little survey here. We'll get in touch with you and we'll get you on our stage. And with that, Joseph, that's what I've got for my intro deck today. Are you ready to talk about what's new in Power BI?
I am ready if my mic doesn't float away.
Well, I can still hear you, so that's a good thing.
All right.
So, awesome.
There we go. All right, thank you, Ken, and yeah, welcome everybody to the August Power BI Check meetup group. As always, I'm going to present the what's new in Power BI for this month, and as Ken was alluding to a little bit earlier, I've had 2 days or so for what's new, which may sound short, but is actually pretty long with how the timing of these groups has ended up. So we'll have a fun few examples to go through today. Yes, the visual level format is definitely going to be the focus of what I'm going to jump into. The place I always start is the feature summary for what's new in Power BI for this month. So this blog post is comprehensive. It covers pretty much everything of what's new in Power BI for this month, whether that's something new going into preview, something that's gone from preview to generally available, or just like little bug fixes or stuff that's new to the tool. My two favorite ones are visual level format strings, which I'm going to come back to in just a second, because the first one I want to demo is the DAX query view in the web. And the reason I want to look at this this particular feature is because I know that for the last couple months I've been going over a lot of stuff in the DAX query view. It's really revolutionized the way I use Power BI. It's made writing DAX so much easier, updating measures on a click, and it's a lifesaver. It's really taking the functionality of external tools, bringing them into Power BI. But now it's available on the web as opposed to just the desktop app. So if I jump into the Power BI service, I have a Power BI report here. This is one of the older reports I've used for demos. And you actually don't access DAX query view from a report view. You have to access it directly through the semantic model. So your model that's like underlying your report and contains all the data that populates the visuals. You can get to it by going to a workspace. So in this case, I'm just going to my workspace. And if I click on the what's new in April 2020, we see down here we have both a report and a semantic model available to us. Let's see if I can sort this. There we go. Yeah, we have both a report and a semantic model for what's new in Power BI. So if I hit the little ellipsis here for more options on the semantic model object, down here at the bottom of the drop-down menu, we now have write DAX queries. So if I click on that option, it prompts me to pick an account, and it opens up a new window, and it brings us to the DAX query view. So now we have a connection to our model. We can see all the tables contained in our model on the right. I do not want to take a tour, as well as if we had calculation groups or perspectives or relationships or anything like that. Obviously, this is a very basic model. We don't have I only have 2 measures, not a lot of stuff in there, but we can start writing DAX queries. So by default, we can see that if we just want to return like the top 100 rows of our detail table, we can run this query and we can start exploring and investigating tables in our data model, start defining measures. We can do everything that I've demoed over the last couple of months. In the desktop app, we can now do in the Power BI service. So I think that's really cool. If we jump back into the blog, yeah, it's already been, I think Donald called it out already in the chat. My favorite feature from this month, specifically for the desktop application, is the visual level format strings. So this impacts this impacts visuals in general in Power BI. It is in preview, so it's sort of a limited scope of capabilities at the moment, but I imagine in the coming months that's going to expand and expand. But it also ties into the visual level calculations as well. We now have visual level formatting to complement visual level calculations, and that's something that I have looked at over the last couple of months as well. So why don't we jump into Power BI and I'll show exactly what visual level format strings means. So if I open up my data model on the right-hand side here, I have this total balance measure. And it's really basic. It just looks at sum of the balance column in our fact table. And up here in the ribbon under measure tools, this is one area where we can format this measure. So right now it's a whole number. We have 0 decimal places. It's formatted as a currency, so it has like a leading dollar sign in this case, and it's comma delimited. And we can see what that looks like with this card visual here. We can see we have total balance. We have a whole number, no decimal places, leading dollar sign as it's formatted as a currency. And so previously, once we've formatted this in one place, we can see that when we have the same measure in our line chart or our area chart, we have that exact same formatting on our y-axis, and we have the same formatting on the data labels as well. And we did have some options to like display as millions, maybe display as thousands, display in different units. But if we wanted to change the formatting of this measure, like if we wanted to not have a dollar sign, for instance, we would sort of have to change that everywhere in the model. We couldn't just change it specifically in one visual or one visual element. And that's what this update is changing, is we now have these different levels within our report of formatting. We have the model level, which is what has already existed. That's what I've just shown. We have a measure in our data model, and we've formatted that measure. Now we have the ability to format specifically for one visual. And we can get there by going to the Format tab on the pane here. No, not in the, in the Format tab on the pane. And if we go to Properties, we now have Data Format right here at the top. So this is like a general property that is on, I'm not sure if it's on all visuals yet. No crying in Power BI. I'm not sure if it's on all visuals yet. I haven't dug in to see if it's on all types of visuals, but I know for sure it's available on this line chart. So we can select which field that's part of this visual that we want to format. In this case, it's my total balance measure, and I just want to format this. Let's say just without, I don't want it to be a currency. I just want it to be a whole number without the leading dollar sign. So I can just type in my format string. So just like pound, comma, pound for a whole number. And we can see that both the y-axis and the data labels now don't have that leading dollar sign displayed within this visual. But over here in the card visual, they still have the leading dollar sign. It's still formatted as a currency within the data model. It's just in the visual that it's changed. And we even have one more level of control over these types of visual format strings. If we wanted to change like the data labels to be different from the y-axis, we could do that as well. So we've sort of already had this ability. If I go to data labels, there's only one series. It's just the total balance measure. There's only one line on my line chart. And if I go to value down here, we see that we have our my total balance measure. And under display units, this is where we've been able to filter between like auto, none, thousands, millions, billions, whatever. If I click custom at the bottom, you can see it sets off something like super weird here. We're getting a bunch of trailing decimals, and we're not comma delimited. It looks terrible. But it gives us the ability to enter both a DAX measure to control our format string, as well as we can just type it in the box like we did with the visual level formatting. So for this one, I'm going to do something slightly different. I want it to be a whole number, but I want to force it to display to decimals in millions. So now we have 3 different formats within our report for the same measure. We have at the model level, it is currency. We see this leading dollar sign, no decimal places. On the within the visual, we've dropped the currency sign. It's just formatted as a whole number, as defined in this properties tab on the format pane under data format. And then specifically an element within our visual, the data labels, we can format differently, again, using a custom format string, this time forcing to display to 2 decimal places, but rounded to millions. So this is super cool that we can go to all sorts of levels. And I should call out, there's a very detailed explanation in the blog post, very good actual supporting video on YouTube as well, specifically for this feature. And one thing to keep in mind is that there is like a hierarchy of these format strings. So anything that's applied on the visual level will override what's defined at the model level, which is what we've seen in this demo. And same thing with the element. Anything defined at the element level within the visual, like the data labels, will override anything defined at the visual level or at the model level as well. So this is fantastic. Now we don't have to sort of mess around with either custom dynamic format strings or worry about how we're formatting our DAX measures. We can do this differently. And one use case I really like is making sure that our data labels within our visual are nice and tight. We don't have to have like 9 digits or 10 digits if we're dealing with really large numeric values. The last part of this update that I like, which again I've demoed previously, if I just change this visualization from a scatter plot to a table, we can see that I have a visual calculation applied to this table. So we have a count product, total balance, and count of clients from my data model, but I've just defined this average balance specifically for this visual. And this just takes a different visual or a different calculation, average balance, and it does some conditional logic on it here. But previously, there was no way to actually format this visual level calculation. We could use like the format function in DAX, which is fine if it's like a table or a matrix like this. But as soon as we want it to be a different visual type, like a bar chart, a column chart, a line chart, what have you, it would sort of break because everything's converted to a text value, even if it displays differently than a text value. But now using this visual level formatting, I can format this visual calculation string as well, just like how we've done with other things from our actual data model. So if I go to format, properties, data format, I can pick this if average balance as well as the other visual calculation average balance here. And if I want to do the same thing, like I don't want 2 decimal places, I just want it to be a whole number, I can define that here and it gets updated in the visual. We can see both the preview down here as we're building it out, as well as what the visual looks like in our report. And when I go back to the report now, it looks nice, everything's formatted, we're not dealing with decimal points. So really nice to have even more control over the format strings of our measures at different levels of a new hierarchy in our reports. As I said, back in the blog post, there is quite a good write-up, some nice visuals to sort of indicate that hierarchy of model, visual, and visual element. And I can only assume over the coming months, I'm going to present more and more of the updates of what comes in with these format strings. And it just opens up new possibilities of what we can do with natively within the Power BI desktop app. So with that, those are my 2 favorite features from this month. I'm going to wrap it up there and happy to pass it back to Kent, pass it back to Alejandra for the feature presentation. So thank you, everyone, and looking forward to watching someone else do Power Query, as Ken said.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joseph. Once again, always appreciate you coming in and taking the time to give us the what's new. That's awesome stuff. And I got some more stuff I got to go play with. So
featuring Freddie, apparently.
Yeah, well, there you go. Hey, you know what? Sometimes we got to be excited about this kind of stuff, right? And
Absolutely.
sometimes working with Power BI, I understand why there's crying in Power BI, so it's all good.
That's very true.
So anyhow, I want to get out of the way here because I want to turn the stage over to Alejandra to talk to us about Power Query. So Alejandra, welcome to the VanPUG user group. What do you have for us? You are on mute, by the way, so we should probably work that part out first.
Thank you.
There we go. Awesome. Good
Can
stuff.
you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I see some familiar names. And I'm wondering that Alejandro, if it's the Alejandro that I'm thinking about, is that Alejandro Simon? I don't know where you're watching from, but please let me know. I really appreciate the support everywhere I go, so thank you very much, everyone. And if you don't know me, Alejandra Horvath, let me start sharing my screen and let me bring the presentation as well. And everyone, I hope you can see my screen. And yes, hola, Alejandro. Thank you so much, Kevin. Sorry, Ken. And Alejandro Simon from Panama, thank you very much. I have learned so much from you, so thank you. I'm very glad you are here. Everyone who is here, thank you. And Aditya, who is watching us at 5:30 a.m., thank you very much. I saw someone from Australia. Thank you, everyone who attended. Thank you very much. Okay. So I have a presentation. If I can make it work, you know what? I'm gonna just bring this one here. It's gonna be just faster and better. Otherwise, I'm gonna take a lot of time trying to switch screens, and it's just very simple, very, very quick. Today, we're gonna see how to improve your data transformations using M. As I said, my name is Alejandra Horvath. I'm a CPA here in Canada. I'm a certified Excel expert and a Power Query enthusiast, and I'm also Excel and Power Query trainer. Very quickly, if you are learning, if you are starting your road with Power Query, I'm gonna have a masterclass in the Global Excel Summit on September 27. It's gonna be a 5-hour masterclass. We're going to go from the basic, we're going to start with the super basic, and we are going to learn a lot about Power Query, what a list, a record table is, start working with simple transformations. So I'm hoping that at the end of that class, you will have a very good understanding what Power Query is, how you can use it at work, and we're going to end with very intermediate transformations. We have a lot of cases, real life cases. So I hope you find it useful. If you enter the code Alejandra10, you will get a 10% discount. And let's jump to today because we have a lot to learn. So we're gonna start with M, how M can enhance your data transformation skills. And we're gonna do that with a real life example. And at the end of the session, we're going to have a Q&A time or a spot for that. However, if you have questions during the presentation, and if I see that I can answer right away, sometimes it's easier just to respond at the time when we are presenting the example. So I'm going to keep my eye on the chat, and also Ken is checking if I miss any of those comments or questions. What we're going to see today is in Power BI. However, what we learn here is also applicable to Excel. So that's the beauty about Power Query. I love that. And this is for the end. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to jump straight to Power BI. I already have the case solved. And before I go there, I'm going to show you what we're going to transform, which files we're going to transform. Here on my desktop, I have a folder called Demo Vancouver 2024 and a folder called Vendors. Inside of that folder, I have a subfolder called PDFs, and I have several files. Some of them are Excel, and some of them are CSV. You can see here on the right where I have the preview. I have the CSV, and I have a demo February that is also an Excel file. if the preview wants to cooperate. Perfect. So I'm going to open this demo FEV in Excel. And here we have the file that we have empty rows on the top. We have empty columns like this. We have merged columns also. I have another empty column here. I have another empty column here. We have double header. I have the month on row 6, and I have the pay periods the pay periods that were inside of that month, let's say. This is a real case example with different elements, but overall, this is very similar to what I was working with. The person who was working with this file had around 700 vendors. So as you can see here, there are empty rows, there are subtotals, and there are lines that we don't need. Also, we have GL accounts that have no amount whatsoever. So what this person was doing was manually removing all of these rows that are not needed, removing the columns that were empty as well. All of this was manually, and these reports have to be issued every 2 weeks. So she took around 26 days just cleaning the reports per year. Once I was able to automate this process, she had to refresh the pivot table, which took 5 minutes. And I'm not really exaggerating, is what Power Query can do for you. And that's why I'm so excited to share what Power Query can do for you. The original file had hidden columns. As you can see, you still see the header on column B. However, the value is in column A, cell A7. So the original example had several of these. For this example, I'm bringing only one. So how you solve one, you can solve more. It's funny because Aditya and I were chatting about that, and it's like, oh, it's perfect because that's what I'm going to show in this presentation. So without further ado, let's start cleaning the reports. So I'm going to close this file. I'm not going to save it. I'm just going to leave it as is. As you can see, January has the same structure and same that March. So I'm going to move this one over here. And as I said, I already have this solved because when it's live, we never know. So I'm going to click at Transform Data to open my Power Query editor and Ctrl+C+ to zoom in. And from here on the left, I'm going to right click and I'll say New Query Excel Workbook. What we're going to do today, we're going to transform one of these files, get the process ready, and then we're going to apply that process to nested tables. We are not going to create a custom function. We are going to transform nested tables with the same process. Okay, so I'm going to use January. I'm going to double click there. So the navigator will open, Ctrl+C+ to zoom in again. I'm going to click at Sheet, and then you can see the content of the file that I just showed you. All the files have the same structure, the same layout. So you can see over here what I just showed you. For February, you can see in here, this is for January. I'm going to select this sheet, and I'm going to say, OK, we're going to transform this sheet. I'm going to double click here on the left where they say Sheet 1, which is the name of the query, and I'm going to say that this is going to be demo. Press Enter, and I'm going to hide that section so we have a little bit more room here on the table. On the right, I have the steps that Power Query is creating for me. I'm going to remove the change type. I don't need that just yet. I'm going to stay with the navigation step. In here, my first step is to remove the blank rows that I have here up to row 5. Row 6, I need to keep that because if I scroll to the right, I can see that the month is here on column 11, row 6. So I need to remove everything that is above this row. However, I don't know if all the reports have the same number of rows that I need to remove on the top of the month. So to make it dynamic, I'm going to click at FX to create a new step. And after the equal, I'm going to say table, transform columns. I'm going to open parentheses to the table that is coming from a previous step. The step is called navigation. However, the variable is called sheet1 underscore sheet. It's the only step that Power Query names differently to the variable. So this is the table that I'm seeing here. That is the table that I need to transform. I'm going to press comma. My next parameter says that I need a transformation operation as a list. Oh, actually, I'm going to go back, because I'm going to skip only. We're going to apply the transform columns in the next transformation, which will be the nested table. Sorry about that. So instead of table transform columns, I'm going to say skip. So I need to skip the rows that are up to vendor report. If I say 5, which is the number of rows that I want to remove, I close parentheses and I press enter, I see that I get the table up to the level that I want. I remove the first 5 rows. But as I said, if my other files don't have that information, don't have the 5 rows above that, then I'm going to be in trouble because the query won't apply properly, or the steps, the process won't apply properly. So what I'm going to do here to make this dynamic, I'm going to say list position of, or open parentheses, and I need to provide the list. The list, I'm going to provide it from the table that I'm seeing here. So the table is called sheet1 underscore sheet. And to provide information as a list, I'm going to provide one set of square brackets. This is called projection. One set of square brackets is going to bring the column that I indicate here is going to bring it as a list. So I'm going to say column 2. And what I'm looking for, the value that I'm looking for is vendors report. Go to the end, press enter. And here I have up to vendor report. I want to remove that line as well. So I'm going to say that I want that plus 1. Press enter, and now I have removed that, right? Just to show you that this is working properly, I'm going to remove this part of the formula, and I'm just going to keep the list position off, and I'm going to press enter. And here is where you have your number 5 that I entered manually previously of this. So now that I know that I'm bringing the proper number, I'm Control V here to paste whatever I remove, go to the end, close parentheses, and press enter. So now you can see that my first row will have the month that I need to keep right here. And now I need to work with this double header. And I see a question over here. Just give me 1 second. Yes, this session will be recorded later on. And yes, no, it's not a question for the session. That's fine, or for whatever we're working here on the table. Excellent. Now what I need to do, I need to work with this double header. So I'm going to rename my step here, and I'm going to say this is going to be skip. I'm going to call that step skip, so it makes sense later on when I'm checking my steps. And if I need to go back to any of these steps, then I can identify which step I need to go back. Since I'm here, I know that I don't need the rows with the totals. In this case, our table is very small, but when you have 700 vendors, 800 vendors, then you don't need 700 or 800 lines with the total. So I'm going to remove them right now. I'm going to remove the totals over here. And I also know that I don't need these lines. So I'm going to remove those ones as well. Okay, I'm going to say OK. And now you can see that Power Query created the step here for me. And it's removing everything that has totals, and it's removing everything that has those lines. Okay, I'm going to call this, I'm going to call this start, because we will go back to this step later on in the process. Now, what I need to do, I want to keep only the first 2 rows. And to do that, I'm going to create a new step, fx. I'm going to say table, first n. And I believe I learned this from Alejandro Simon, who is here. So thank you very much. So I don't need to transpose the whole table to work with the double headers. I can keep the first 2 lines, transpose, and work with the double headers. That helps a lot with performance. So now that I have my 2 lines here, I'm going to say equal, and I'm going to say table transpose. Here, open parentheses, go to the end, close parentheses, and press enter. Now I have these 2 columns, which has the month and all the other headers, right? So here on the column 1, I'm going to right click, I'm going to say fill down. Now I have the month of January for pay period 1 and January for pay period 2. That's what I needed to do here. I'm going to go to add column, custom column, because what I'm going to do now, I'm going to combine the text. I want that January and pay period 1 and January pay period 2 are in only one cell. From here, the name of the column, I'm going to say is going to be A. I'm not going to keep that name anyway, so A is fine. And what I want to do, I'm going to combine, text combine. I'm going to open parentheses, and I need to provide the text as list. To tell Power Query that something is a list, I need to provide the curly brackets, open curly brackets, and I need to start providing the items that are going to be inside of that list. I want the column 1, comma, column 2, close the curly brackets because my list is done, comma, which is the separator. What is the best separator here? My separator can be anything. So I like to give only the two spaces, but you can also provide, I don't know, like semicolon, colon, or even the pipe. So I'm going to close parentheses and I'm going to say, okay. You see when I use text combine, if I have a null and I have text, the semicolon is not present. The semicolon is only present when I have the month and the pay period. It's only when I have text in both cells. If instead of using text combine, I select both columns, right-click and merge, and I said I want the semicolon as a separator, and I say OK, you see in here, Control plus, that where I had the null, I have no information on the left, but I have the semicolon, and then the information from the second column. That's why I don't use merge. That's why I use Control-Shift minus to zoom out. So that's why I use text combine. So I'm going to remove the last step. I just use that to show you. And now I remember that I didn't show you I didn't rename this step. So here I'm going to say transpose header. Headers. Something that is significant for you. Then here I'm going to fill down. This is the month. Enter. And then the add column, I'm going to say that this is combined headers. Enter. Now that I have this information ready, I just need column A. I'm going to make a projection. And when I close the parentheses, I'm going to provide double square brackets. When I provide only one set of square brackets, it returns a column as a list. In this case, I want to return a column. I'm going to say the column is A. That's why I provided this 2 sets of square brackets. I'm going to press enter. And now I have my column A here without the need of creating a new step. Now that I have this information here, I'm going to transpose this. I can create another step here, or I can even use the transform and then transpose here. But since I'm here, I'm going to say transpose. So far, we have seen there are several steps that you wouldn't be able to create or to process if you were using the user interface. There are some of the steps that you have been able to improve, let's say, you have able to create by using M. And that's the goal of this session, that you see the importance and the benefit to be able to work with M. Let me see. I don't see questions. I just see some comments. So yeah, table text combine and concatenating can be useful. That's key. Thank you very much. So now that I have the first line, I can combine with my table where I say start. Now I can combine that line with this table. But from this table, I don't need the first two rows because I already transformed that here. So what happens if I bring my table from the step start? So I'm providing the ampersand so I can bring both tables. So here is my first row that I brought from this step, the previous step, where I have the headers. And here is my table from here and below. Here is my table that is coming from my step start. So I want to skip the first two rows because I already transformed them here. So I'm going to say after the ampersand, I'm going to say skip. So I actually table skip. Table skip. Open parentheses, the table is coming from the step start, comma. What is the condition or the count? In this case, I'm going to provide it 2 because it will always be 2. Close parentheses and press enter. Now the headers that came from this start step are gone. And I keep my table with the first line that I will promote as headers. But before I do that, I need to deal with the columns. Remember that column that was hidden, column A, but it looked like the vendor name title was in column B. Well, we need to fix that first. So first, here on my column 2, I'm going to right click and I'm going to fill down so I can copy the name of the vendor, all the rows below that, right? So, and every time that I have a new name, that name will be copied down below and so on and so forth. Now that I did this, I can merge these two columns. And in this case, I'm going to merge the columns because I'm not going to have any separator. So I'm going to just go back to my step custom. I would like to rename these steps. And I'm going to say that this was table combine. Table actually is headers and table, something like that. So I'm going to go back to my fill down. I'm going to say fill down vendor. Let's enter. Now I have my column 1, press and hold the control key, select column 2, right click and merge columns. I don't want any separator and I can leave merge as the title of the column or I can put any other name and B. I'm not going to keep that either in the next step, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to say merge. I just want to leave that merge vendor. Now that I have fixed this issue with the column name in one column and the vendors in the other column, now that I have only one column there, I can go here on the table that we have on the left and say use first row as headers. That is looking much better. However, now that I look at this, I can see that I have several nulls right here in every single set of data, let's say, in every single set of each vendor. So be very careful when you filter these nulls, because if you try to do that where you have amounts, it can be that one column for one pay period has null, but the next pay period has an amount. So just be very careful which column you select to remove those nulls. The one that I know when I was working with this set of data, I know that for the GL account, truly present those rows that are completely null. So for that reason, I'm going to go here to the row and I'm going to remove the nulls and I'm going to say OK. By doing that, my data set is smaller. And one thing that I forgot to do in the previous steps, when I promoted the headers here, Power Query creates another step for the change type. I don't need that right now. I'm going to remove it and I'm going to delete that. And I don't like it because the name of the columns are hard-coded every time that we have one change type, and we don't need that right now. So I'm going to just change the name of this step. I'm going to say promote headers. And I don't see any questions. So if I miss some, please let me know. Okay, thank you. And here on filter rows, I'm going to say filter GR. See, and press enter. Now this is looking much better. But now I need to deal with the next issue, which is the empty columns. These empty columns can change, can have a different name. I don't know. I don't know if all the files that I'm going to bring will have exactly the same number of empty columns, and especially at the end. What if I have more empty columns, and if I hard code anything here, and especially this column with the month? Let's say if I delete, I just press delete. If I delete that column, the name of that column is hard coded. And of course, this is for the month of January. What is going to happen with the month of February is going to give me an error because that column is not going to be there. So for that reason, I need to make this step as dynamic as possible. And to do that, I'm going to show you something that I learned from Melissa de Corte. I have learned so much from her. So, and it is to use the function table profile. So here, beside to the formula bar, I'm going to press FX. And after the equal, I'm going to say the table profile, open parentheses, to the table that we are seeing here, that is coming from my step filter GL, close parentheses, I'm going to press enter. What this function is going to give us is a column with the name of the columns in that table. Here are all the name of the columns. I have minimal, maximum, average, etc. What I'm interested on is the count of items that column has and the null count. If these numbers are equal, that means that I have all the items in that column as null. So I'm going to select count, press and hold the control key and select null count. I'm going to go to add column, standard, and I'm going to subtract those two numbers. I have my column subtraction that any column with a 0, that means it's empty. It's all nulls, same number of nulls, same number of items. Here I have the name of the columns that I want to remove. And let me just quickly rename my steps. So profile. And I'm gonna give the working files and the solution file to Ken, so he can make this available for you to use. So extraction. So that's another reason why I want that the steps are renamed, so you can identify it easier. And here on the filter rows, I'm gonna call these columns to remove. And I'm going to make another projection here. I'm going to bring the column as a list. And remember, when I want a list, it's only one set of square brackets. So I'm going to say column. Make sure that you spell the name of the column exactly the same that the name is here. So I'm going to press enter. And now I have my list of the empty columns. So I'm going to use that for the function table remove columns. So I'm going to create another step. I'm going to say equal and table remove columns right here. Open parentheses, and I need to bring the table. The table that I want to bring is the table where I filter the GL accounts. When I filter that, I have all the columns, the empty and the populated columns, or the columns with values. So I'm going to say filter GL. So I'm referring to this step right here. That's this one, comma, and I need to provide the columns as any. So this is the list of columns that I'm going to bring. Close parentheses, enter. So here you see Control-Shift- to zoom out, so you can see how many columns we kept. So only 2, 3, 4, 5. If we go to Filter GL, you can see how many columns we have back then when we have all of the empty columns as well. So I'm going to go back to our last step. I'm just going to look if we don't have any questions. Okay, perfect. So from here, I'm going to rename this step, and I'm going to say that quickly, this is called, okay, remove columns. And actually, well, yes, let's say remove columns. When I did that, now I just need to unpivot these columns, right? So I can select column January pay period 1, press and hold Control and select January pay period 2. I can right-click and select unpivot columns. When I do that, you will notice here that Power Query used unpivot other columns. So that is very helpful because if I had selected, I'm going to go one step before this. When I selected January pay period 1 and pay period 2, if I hard coded these two columns, then those two columns will refer to January, but we will have an error when February, March, and any other month came. So be very mindful what you ask the user interface to do, and make sure that what is here in the formula bar relates to what you were asking for. In this case, I ask unpivot columns. However, when I look at the formula, it says unpivot other columns. I'm going to remove this step, which will show us that if I select vendor name, press and hold the Shift key, and select GL name, right-click and select unpivot other columns, we get the same function, okay? So just keep that in mind. I'm going to rename this step as unpivoted. I know what that means, and it's the only unpivot transaction that we are going to do today. So that's fine. Now I'm ready. Before I split this column, I'm going to remove the zeros on the column values. And before I do that, I'm going to rename the names of these columns. And I'm going to do that in the formula bar. Instead of attribute, I'm going to provide any name to this column. I'm going to say this column is D. I'm not going to keep that name because I need to split that column. And the value, I'm going to rename that as amount. I'm going to press enter, and now you see the new names for these columns is here without me creating a new step. I could have just double click and rename the columns, but it would create another step. So now that I did that, I'm ready to remove the zeros. I don't need the zeros, right? So I'm going to remove zeros here. I'm going to say, okay. And now my data set is still, is smaller. So now that I did that, I select my column D, right click, and I'm going to say split column by delimiter. And the delimiter will be, I'm going to provide a custom because I provided one space, semicolon, and one space. So just be mindful which separator you use, and that's the separator that you're going to use for when you split this column. One column will be for the month, and one column will be for the pay period. As you can see, Power Query created here at the bottom a change type. Again, I don't want that because as I mentioned, we have the name of the columns hard-coded. And if something is different in the other files, then we're going to have an error there. So I'm going to remove this. And the split column delimiter, I'm going to say split month. I'm going to rename these columns, and I'm also going to do this in the formula bar. Instead of D1, I'm going to say this is month. And instead of D2, I'm going to say this is pay period. I'm going to go to the end and press enter. And now I have the proper column names. Power Query created again my change tab. I'm going to remove that. I have my process ready. This is what I want to do in all the other files, right? So I'm going to expand the query section. I'm going to right click, new query, more, folder. When you're working with Excel, you're going to right-click file, and I think you have the option of folder. You don't need to go to other sources. So here in Power BI, we have get data, and here folder. And from here, let me copy the path where I have all the files, and I can also take a look here to the chat if we have any questions. I don't see any questions. And as Aditya said, yeah, table profile and the difference are deeply buried. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Yes, those are treasure. Treasure. Okay, let me bring the folder where I want to get the information from. That is the folder I showed you at the beginning, and where I have all these files. I'm going to say OK. And as I showed you at the beginning, I'm going to bring it here. I have desktop, demo Vancouver 2024, vendors. I have all these files, which include CSV, Excel, a subfolder called PDFs, and of course, I have PDF files inside of this folder. All of that comes here when I bring the information from the folder, including the PDF files. Control-Shift+ to zoom in. So that's okay. I'm going to transform the data. So I cannot combine yet. I need to transform the data first. And the first thing that I need to filter is the extension. The extension will be XLSX. I'm going to say OK. And in this case, I don't have any file open. From when you have files open, you will have the name of the file again here in the table, and you will have a wave tiered at the beginning of the name of that file. And if you leave it like that, it will bring the information twice. So to avoid that, here on the formula bar, I can create another step, and I can select that does not begin with. I can select that from here, does not begin with. But I don't want to do that. I want to do only one step. So I'm going to just do it manually. And I'm going to say that, and I don't want, so I'm going to say not. I don't want the text contains. And the text will come from my column name. Comma, the text that or the string that I don't want to come there is that wave or that tier that is coming in front of the name. And that's all that I need. Close parentheses for the text contains, close parentheses for select rows, press enter. And now you don't see any change, but next time that you have a file open, it won't come to this list. I just want to keep the column content, which is the one that will have the tables that I want to transform. At this time, I only have binary information, but I just want to keep the column content right now. So double set of square brackets, content, because I want to bring this as a table. I just want to bring that column. Let's say if I wanted to keep more than one column, I can provide a comma, open a new set of square brackets, and I can say, for example, name, and I'm going to press enter. So you see that anything that is inside of the first set of square brackets, I need to separate by a comma, and each name of each column that I want to keep there, it needs to be separated by the comma, but it needs to also be inside of one set of square brackets. In my case, I don't need two columns, I only need one. So I'm going to remove name, and I'm going to press enter. And I think I delete too much, and I'm going to press enter. So I'm going to just call this filter. Okay, I don't see questions. Oh, Ken is responding. Never mind. I saw something. Okay, perfect. Okay, Geoff, I hope I said this correctly. See you later. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to create a new step because now I'm going to transform the information that is inside of the column content. So after the equal, I'm going to say table transform columns. I was getting ahead of myself in the previous example or with the demo file. So this here is where we are going to use that function. So table transform columns. The table is coming from my previous step called filter. I'm going to press a comma. I need to provide the transformation operation as a list. I need to provide the curly brackets to tell Power Query that this is a list. I'm going to provide the name of the column inside of quotation marks, and the name of my column is content. In this case, I only have one column, but you will have tables where you have more than one column, and that's where you indicate which column you want to transform. I'm going to say each. I need to provide the transformation as a function, and I'm going to say that I want to bring the workbook. Well, where did that go? Excel workbook. I'm going to open parentheses, and I need to provide information as binary. That is exactly what I have in every single line of this column. For that reason, I'm going to provide the underscore. This is telling Power Query, please go to that column and look at every single line that is in that column. I'm going to go to the end, close parentheses for the table transform column. And now you see that it doesn't say binary anymore. It says table. Now I'm going to expand the content of content. And what I want to bring is only the column that is called data. That is the column that will bring my tables. I press enter, and what I have in here, now you will see that I have the content of my files. This is February right here. This is January right over here. You see January. And then we'll have March right over here, right? So I'm bringing every single file in that folder. That is Excel file. And from here, I'm going to just transform the information on these tables. So I'm just going to quickly rename this as the transformation. Okay. Actually, this is the expand data. Oh, expand content, actually. Just very quickly here, expand content. Because now the transformation is going to come in the next step. I'm going to go to my previous query, demo. I'm going to go to Home, Advanced Editor, Ctrl+C+ to zoom in, and I'm going to select from here up to Skip. Skip is the first step that I want to apply to those tables. I'm going to Ctrl+C, cancel. I'm going to go to my query vendors. Now I go to Home, Advanced Editor, and here, Ctrl+C+ to zoom in again. After the last step here, as you can see, it doesn't have a comma because that is the last step that is telling Power Query, hey, I'm ready to finish. I'm going to bring the end expression, and please bring the value of this variable as result. Okay, because this is not the last step anymore, I'm going to provide a comma, Control-Enter, and I'm going to paste what I brought from my other query. Control-V to paste. I'm going to go back here where my skip step is. That's the one that I brought from my previous query. This is the process that I want to apply to all the tables that are in that column, to my nested tables. Here, the table that I'm referring to is the table that I used in that example. In this case, the tables are coming from the previous step, but I'm going to include the transformation first. So I need to tell Power Query to transform the column. So transform the tables that are inside of this column. And the table is coming from expanding content, comma. I need to provide the transformation as a list. And I'm going to say this is, I believe it was the column data. And I'm going to say each. And I'm going to work with nested lets. I have my let that is going to tell Power Query start the process, or anything that is inside of this expression is the process that I want you to do or to follow. And now I can say that table skip, every single table will come from every single line that is in the column data. So that again, I need to provide the underscore to tell Power Query to look at every single line. And also when I told Power Query, hey, bring me the list position of the column 2, that is when I had to provide this as a list. So I'm going to ask Power Query to look at every table and bring the content of column 2 as a list. And there is something that I'm missing here, the equal here. I could see a little red line. I'm going to remove this so you can see it. If I don't have the equal, you have a small red line under the open parentheses. So that's why I knew I was having an issue. I was having an error there. Okay, so now I told Power Query that I want to do all this process, or I want to perform all this process here. And now Control-Shift- to zoom out, so hopefully we can see a little bit better here. So before I copy and paste this process, Power Query was bringing the value of this variable exp content as a result. Now I don't want that. Now I want to bring, oh, actually, give me 1 minute. I'm having an error here. I'm having a moment. Transformation. Transformation is the name of the variable. Table transform columns is the function that I'm going to use. So probably someone was telling me something there. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yes, who was telling me that? Aditya, thank you so much. Fortunately, I didn't press OK yet. Okay, perfect. Another thing that I'm missing here is closing the curly brackets for, remember, all of this process is coming because I'm transforming the column data. So I need to close that curly bracket, and I also need to close the parentheses for the table transform columns. Now, as I was saying, when we open the column content, then that was the value that we were bringing as a result. Now I need to bring the value of my variable transformation, Control-C. Here, I'm going to say in transformation, and I'm going to say done. And I pray that everything went well. Yes. So now we have February, we have January, and we have March. They have been transformed in no time, right? So now what happens very quickly if I have more files? And here I have a folder called additional, and I have files from April to July. So I'm going to select all of them, Control-C. I'm going to go back to my vendors folder, and I'm going to say Control-V. And something very specific with the file July, I added new vendor just to make sure that you are, to show you that new vendors, new categories, new GL accounts will be added dynamically to our process. So we have a new vendor, we have a new category that is not present in any of the other files. So now that I did this, we have from January to July. I'm going to go back to my query. I'm going to go to home, refresh all. And now you see that I have all the months that I just I put in my folder. So I have April, I have February, January, July, all of them have been transformed in no time. So from here, I'm just going to say effects. I'm going to say equal, table combine. Here, open parentheses, asking me for the tables as a list. My tables are here inside of my column data. I'm going to provide one set of square brackets. I'm going to provide the name of that column, so I can bring that as a list. And now I have all my files into one big table for all the months. If I need to change, if I need to remove now any of the files here, let's say if I remove May, for example, and I may remove March, actually no March, Control-Z, because I don't have another copy of March. I'm gonna remove June. So I'm gonna go here, home, refresh all. And now you will see that I don't have those months. I don't have May and I don't have June. And it didn't take any time to refresh this information. That's all that I had for you. I hope to enjoy this presentation. Sorry for the errors that I had over there. So, but I fixed them. So I hope you find this useful. And any questions, please let me know. I don't see any questions here in the chat, but any questions, please let me know.
Alejandra, I'm going to ask you one question.
Yeah.
So I'm always interested in watching, when you watch somebody that's like, a master of their M code and they work through and they build on these things here. But when would you do this versus, say, building a custom function using, a template or a sample transform so that you have the ability to go back and modify it easier later? Or are you not concerned about that?
I'm not too concerned about that, because if I need to modify something, I just go to this file, I modify it here, and I just copy and paste again. So I'm not too concerned on that. However, I know, or I have seen, I don't say I know, I have seen how you work, and you like to keep always like where your source is coming, you reference your query, and then you create the parameters and things like that, because if something changes there, automatically changes, right? Which is very efficient. At the same time, I like the flexibility to have two separate things. I just find it, I don't find that creates a problem for me. And I feel more comfortable having that freedom of, I'm not connected to something that is something goes wrong with that source, then everything else is wrong, right? So
yeah, fair enough.
That's why I feel very comfortable with that. However, I know the efficiency, let's say, of having a source or a query that will be your source for your other queries, or you have a query that will be the source if you create a custom function from there using the parameter. Like, it's very efficient, right? So yes, I don't know, I just learn in this way, and it really is, I find it quite easier. So,
it's interesting, because I don't know if I would say it's more efficient for building a custom function. I mean, it's certainly easier to troubleshoot, I find, with things. I haven't tested the efficiency to know which would refresh faster when you deal with some of these things, or if there's any difference, right? But for me, I like the user interface, because my biggest fear with all of this stuff is I cook up some crazy M code function and I'm super proud of it, and then I put it away for 6 months and I come back and I refresh it and something went wrong, and then I'm like, my God, what did I do? And then I got to figure it out. I'm like, I hate trying to read my own work sometimes. So I'm always curious.
That's why I renamed the steps, because I learned that from Win Hopkins.
Yep.
Because he's right. When you go back and you try to figure it out, you're like, why did I do this? Why I didn't rename my steps? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't need to be several months. Sometimes it's 2 weeks. And then you go back and like, why did I do that? Why? I don't get it. But that, I really thank Win for that, because I learned to rename the steps, and that has been a game changer, I have to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know at one point you were checking the chat and you're going, okay, there's a conversation going on that Ken's over here, and I didn't mean to mess you up with that, but one of the comments, just to get it into the video recording, because I think it is important, was there was a comment from someone about, hey, this is really cool. I didn't know that you could actually take two tables and join them with the and or ampersand character. And the comment that I made in the chat, for anybody that didn't see that, is that it's not actually restricted just to working with tables. You can join two lists in the same way. You can join two pieces of text in the same way. You can even join two records in the same way, as I just found out as well. So as long as the value types are the same on both sides of the and, it will actually put them together. So that's, in this case here, it, like with the two tables, it makes sense. It's very, very, very easy and visual. But you can do the same thing with lists. You can do the same thing with records, the same thing with just two pieces of text. I always joke in Excel with the old Excel function. I mean, that was what replaced the concatenate function, because concatenate was just way too hard to spell. So it does the same thing in Power Query, which is very cool. So just as a neat little sort of fun tip that expands on what you had there, I thought it was worth making sure that it got into the recording and didn't just die in the chat after this was over. So. Yeah.
Thank you. See, yes, it's very useful though. When I learned this, it's just makes a big difference. Your code looks cleaner. Like you don't need another line with the code, and I just find it way easier to read.
It's a lot easier to spell than table.combine, right? I mean,
I totally agree. I totally get it. Imagine you speak English, like for need my second language. Like, is there concatenate?
I'm still lazy. I mean, efficient. And honestly, I hate, like, I'm a native English speaker, and I have no idea where the word concatenate came from. Like, for anybody that's like even a native English speaker, looking that up for the first time, it never would have occurred to me in a million years ago. How do I concatenate two things? I'm like, how do I join two things? It took me forever to figure this out. And like, once you finally figure that out and you go, wait, I can do that with and? Yeah, okay, I'm not using that anymore, right? Like, crazy. So, yeah.
I totally get it. Absolutely. Yes, thank you, Ken. And those are those kind of things that you learn at the beginning and stay with you all the way, right? If you miss those kind of things, it really, you keep coding or you keep using whatever you have to use, append tables or something, just to put those two tables together. Just by knowing that an ampersand will do that for you, like, it's so cool, right? So,
well, and I think that's one of the cool tricks that comes out of watching a presentation like this, because I think a lot of people have discovered you can join two pieces of text with the ampersand, but the concept that, like, where you can go, wait, this works on tables, it works on lists, it works on, that's mind blowing, right? So it's a cool trick that hopefully some people will take away from this one as well. So, and yeah, I mean, I see a comment from Aurora about Rick de Groot's website on Power Query, how he has done a fantastic job of documenting so many cool things there as well. So for sure, it's a great shout out. So
yes, and his book with Melissa de Corte and Greg, I don't remember his last name, but the book, the ultimate guide of M or something around those.
Yes, it's very heavy. It will hold your desk down in a hurricane. Yes.
I got the electronic version.
Not quite as heavy. Fair enough. It's a big book. Definitely. 1,700 pages. I didn't count them, but yeah, that's crazy. So, all right, we got a question in here. Tom has asked, what's your take on the transformations that Power Query builds when you get data from folder? It's an open-ended question.
Else when you get from folder, Power Query builds. I'm not sure if I'm getting the understanding the question correctly, but
so the custom function aspects. I mean, again, it's would you use it or would you not, right? Would you roll your own or would you use the combined files functionality that Power Query provides?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it depends. I like to code, so and I like to work with nested tables. So I like custom functions, but I really enjoy working with nested tables. So if I can code, I code. So just saying. So it just keeps my skills up, or otherwise I can lose them if I keep using the user interface quite a bit. So it forces me to learn new functions too. So I really enjoy coding. Yeah.
I'll give you my take on this one, just because I think the answer on these ones here is like which route is better always depends. And I would suggest on two things. So Alejandra, I'm guessing you have a small company. It's just you or maybe a couple of other people. So if anybody's going to be maintaining your stuff, it's you, right?
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that actually plays very heavily into the answer as to which one's better, right? Because my concern is, I mean, if I'm working in a bigger company, my favorite thing to do with work beyond watching someone else do it is delegate the stuff that I built to somebody else to maintain, right? Like I never want to have to work on my own stuff. So in those scenarios, when you're building something, you're going, hey, I'm going to code the heck out of this thing and I'm going to put it out. Well, it now makes it very difficult for somebody else to maintain unless they have those skills. Now, if you've trained them, that's all good. But if you haven't, then using the user interface method it's easier to set up to start with in a lot of cases. And it's easier to maintain for somebody who doesn't necessarily have the deep technical skill that you or I or Rick de Groot or Melissa de Corte might have. So that's kind of one of those things that you sort of balance into it is, what do you plan to do with the solution? Who are you going to give it to? Is it going to be you doing it? Because to me, I mean, I totally get what you're saying. Like, let's dial in those skills. Let's keep expanding them. I want to be better on this thing, so I'm going to push myself. But if I'm going to build it for somebody else, am I going to do that same thing? And the answer may be different. Might be the same, but maybe not. So that's kind of my take there, Todd. I mean, I'm lazy, so I go with the UI first. But But
Honestly, if you start with the user interface and then you build from it, it can save you a lot of time too. So it really is a very good way to start the code. And then if you want to modify or you want to do more stuff or less stuff or whatever it is, you have a very good starting point and it's very fast. That's absolutely true. Another thing that very true, that very real that you said is what you are building is for you or is for someone else. And that is another reason why I like to rename the steps. And right now I nested some of the functions, but I usually don't do that when someone else is going to use it. When someone else is going to use the query, I try to have every single step, every single function in one step. I don't nest functions. So every single step is going to tell that person what that function is doing. So you need to be very careful with that too. But yeah, as you said, I work in a big organization. However, I'm the only one who does this. I'm the only one who looks at it.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
but I mean, but that's always the thing, right? I mean, this is one of the reasons why I love having these meetups, is because I get to see the different ways people approach these things. And I mean, you know, at the end of the day, my joke with Excel is there's always at least 3 ways to do almost everything in Excel. The same is true with Power Query, right? And once we start to be, you know, getting into these things and playing around with them, you know, it's neat to see where we can take different tacks on it, challenge ourselves, balancing in with, okay, am I going to get this one back or not, you know, and whatnot. And Seth, just for reference, I'm not ashamed to be either lazy or efficient. I just like to tell people that I'm being efficient. That's the way I go. So
yes.
Anyhow,
thank you so much, Ken. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's any other questions that are on people's minds. If you want to, now's the time to ask. You know, get it into the chat now, and while we have Alejandra here, but you know, in the meantime, while we're waiting for those, Alejandra, thank you so much for coming and doing this presentation. I really appreciate you having you here, and definitely look to get you back in future. I also, you bet. I also want to throw out again another shout out to Joseph once again for coming and doing our What's New in Power BI. You know, it's fantastic. All of our presenters that come in here and provide their time for free to do this kind of stuff is huge. Really appreciate it. So, Alejandra,
it's free? Who said it's free?
We give a full refund to anybody that's unhappy with the content, right? So, which is nobody's ever asked, which is a good thing. So, anyhow, thank you so much for coming to do this. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. And yeah, I think given that there's no other questions that have come in for today, I think we'll round this one out. So, just a reminder to folks that I will get this produced and published on the SkillWave YouTube channel in the next 24 to 48 hours. Alejandra's going to share me the workbook that she's been using here, so we can give you a link to that as well. And yeah, we'll notify everybody once the link is posted through the Meetup site. So thanks everyone for coming. Thanks again to Joseph for the What's New. Thank you, Alejandra, for doing the presentation. Really appreciate it. And we'll roll it up for now, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you everyone who came. Thank you for the chat. Thank you for the questions, the comments. We really appreciate it. And if you are watching the recorded version, thank you so much for your time. Don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to Ken's channel. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Awesome.
Thank you.
See you next time, folks.
Thank you. Bye.